Welcome to Casa Stefano, episode 50. Can you believe that? I can't remember the last time I did 50 of anything. How about you? What was it that you did 50 of? So anyway, I thought this would be a great opportunity to look at some old footage and talk about lessons learned. Again, welcome to Casa Stefano. Welcome to Casa Stefano. This is my story of buying a house in Italy, sight unseen, during the pandemic, and the adventure of renovating the house and exploring the Salento in southern Puglia. Some episodes back, one of our viewers, Patrice, hi Patrice, when he's not asking me over and over when I'm going to post a new video about me doing stuff, asked about maybe lessons learned or what would I do differently or, kind of video. And it got me thinking that I don't really have a list of FAQs, but, there are some things I've learned along the way. And so it might be a good time to go over some of those things. I don't know about you, but I use my car to drive 2 minutes away. And, my first assumption was, and I had lived in Europe previously, was it was an easy place to get around. And that's largely true in metro areas. But once you get out in the country, certainly in Puglia and other just, rural areas, in any country for that matter, transportation becomes an issue, and it's no different than in Italy. So I did an episode where it was all, planes, trains, and no automobiles. I got to my house by train. And trains certainly run many places, but I can tell you that although I have a train station in Galatane, it's not as convenient as you might think. I mean, I can get to Lecce, the nearest big town, in about 45 minutes. And I can make connecting trains. I can get around to much of the locations that I would normally want to go. But there's lots of places that are not accessible. And buses, I don't know that I've seen a bus. Bus schedules seem to run seasonally. So you have to really think about where you're buying a house and how you're going to get around. Yes, you can rent a car, and certainly at some point you're going to need a car. And I've rented a car on several of the occasions that I've been there. It's been very helpful. Obviously, I needed to get around and explore the area, but also go shopping for things that I would need. And you'll find that although the towns are very close together, you could ride bikes. You probably at some point will need to have a car, or choose an area where a car might not be necessary and the public transportation is, a suitable option. One thing I didn't really figure out until I got there or later on in the process was that you can't own a car unless you're a resident. So, and that's true for much of the Schengen area. So that's kind of a problem. You have to rent a vehicle, and it's expensive. Doesn't matter what you rent or where you're renting it, that can be expensive. Off season, I've gotten some pretty good deals, and you can certainly rent a car only as you need it and not just rent it and park it most of the time. So there are options, but that was something to really consider if you really want to have mobility and get around. I did consider parking because I had heard other stories, and I know what it's like to try and access parking in a congested, major metro area in the United States. So I chose a place where I had convenient, easy parking nearby, and that's not always the case. So whether you can own a car or whether you're renting a vehicle, can you find parking? Can you pull up in front of your house to offload supplies? I've brought bags of cement to my house, and I didn't like carrying them upstairs, let alone down the street. So I was able to pull up right in front and bring things inside. So that's a major consideration, certainly when choosing a house. Real estate is location, 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 and hopefully you've got your list of must-haves when choosing a location. A lot of people like the northern part of Italy, Tuscany, the rolling hills and farmland and mountains and trees and things like that. So it's all a matter of personal preference, what you want. For me, the when I started looking at like €1 homes, uh, a lot of them were in these remote hilltop towns, and I just thought that they were very remote. What I like about the Salento is that there are so many small towns that have that feel, but they're not isolated somewhere. They're literally 5 or 10 minutes away from the next town. And the whole area has a very Mediterranean feel, olive trees and stone walls, and of course the ocean's nearby. You're never far from the ocean. So that appealed to me because I grew up in northern Africa, in Libya, which was an Italian colony, and so much of the architecture and the environment was really reminiscent for me. So it looked very familiar. And as a matter of fact, I came across a picture of here. This is a doorway in Tripoli that was taken by somebody not that long ago, and there's my door. And architecturally, it looks very similar, and obviously the Mediterranean coastline and the sea and everything. And the olive trees and all of that. Probably not as many goats wandering the streets in Galatone, certainly, but nevertheless, that's what appealed to me. So it wasn't an ideal; it was really something nostalgic. So how do you choose a town, and how did I settle on Galatone? Well, I did a lot of Google Street viewing and just checking out all of the towns in the Salento, and they all had a very similar character and feel. Obviously, I did it remotely, so I couldn't experience it firsthand. But again, finding a town that, number one, had everything I needed. Having said that, Galatone is a kind of a quiet town, which suits me just fine. It's a little more of a working class town, maybe. I don't know how else to describe it. It has some restaurants and cafes, but it's not really a destination town in that regard. It really depends on what your lifestyle dictates or what you expect. And I like a quiet, mostly quiet town that has just enough of what I need, and if I want more, I'm not too far away from another town that has whatever I need. Let's talk about the house. Obviously, Casa Stefano is all about the house. If you're interested in this kind of thing, it's going to be all about the house. So here's some things that I've learned and I feel strongly about. First, get a house with some historical character. It's in the historic center of the town, and it's a personal bias. I thought there was a major cool factor of having a 400-year-old church across the street. I have my own gargoyle that overlooks my house. There are features in the house that are unique to the style of architecture and construction, although my house is probably not that old. The top floor is built differently than the bottom floor. I've been in the ground level that my neighbor has, and it's a different kind of construction. It is probably much older. Fixing the place up costs a lot of money. How much does it cost? Everybody wants to know how much it costs. It costs a lot of money. What's a rule of thumb? I really don't know, and it depends on what your house needs, but probably by the time I'm finished, I will have spent as much as I paid to purchase the property, once again, in repairs and materials, whether I've hired people to do things, or even if I've done it myself, just factoring in the the travel to get there and stay there, my personal labor, it's a labor of love, and I plan on taking my time. So I don't really think of that as a cost. So it's probably going to cost more than you think. So my house, it's noisy in the neighborhood. And why is that? Well, first of all, there's the street in front of my house. It's a small, narrow street, but it is one of two ways to exit I would call it the town center. Certainly the city council office is just at the end of the street, and you either have to go right or left from there, and left is past my house. Here we are in the bedroom. Let me close the door, cut off the street noise. So starting at some point in the morning, you're going to hear motorcycles and loud cars and trucks and garbage trucks at 5 o'clock. And my bedroom, balcony overlooks the street. So it's noisy. They keep dogs on the roof. They don't tell you that. Dogs bark, dogs make noise. I've talked about it in my videos. No doubt you can probably hear the yipping dog next door. It's also, the buildings are very close together. The homes share common light wells, let's say. I'll talk about that in a minute. Courtyards. And so you hear people. You hear voices, you hear music, TVs. Certainly not all day and night. I will say that everything gets pretty quiet by 9 p.m. and doesn't really start up until maybe 7 in the morning. Church bells. Church bells. I have a big church nearby. Can you hear that? Didn't really take that into consideration. There's like 14 churches in Galatone, and I only hear like 3. But I also have the town clock at the end of the street, and it chimes all the time. They're somewhat considerate. They don't start until about 7:30 in the morning, and I don't think they go after 9. But if you're trying to take a nap in the middle of the day, it can be pretty interrupting and loud, definitely loud. Louder than I thought. Last is when you're looking at property listings, they'll mention, the way Google Translate does it, they call it a solar area in English. And that could mean a terrace on top. That could mean a courtyard, or what we would call a light well in, a major metro area. Something that lets the light in. If you own a downstairs property, you're likely to not have a terrace, and you may have a solar area in the back, which is just a very small area that lets light in. Your neighbors may have windows that look down on it, so it's not very private. But for many things, for grilling, just to get some light into your house, for sitting outside, having a solar area for me was a must. And I'm lucky I have a big terrace, It's easy to use and access, and obviously hanging out laundry if you need to do that. Um, there's room for me to have all kinds of sitting areas and barbecue, outdoor kitchen kind of thing. So definitely get a solar area. So lastly, we'll talk about kind of some lifestyle stuff. Things like food and cost of living. Those seem to be big uh, hot buttons. Obviously, the food is delicious. Most of the time when you're traveling, you're on vacation, you don't really think too much about diet. You just want to try everything. You're eating in restaurants and you're just loving it. And it's not till you actually are spending time in an area that you get to know things in greater detail. So here's what I've learned about Italy. The 4 P's: pasta, pizza, pastry, and pane, right? Bread. It is, now, granted, don't get angry. Yes, they have plenty of meat and vegetables, but there is a lot of carbohydrates. I'm a diabetic, so I have to watch my carbohydrates. So it takes a little bit of effort for me to, find those things. Now, in the area, there are lots of suitable, alternatives. There's plenty of meat. There's plenty of seafood. There's plenty of vegetables. So you just have to get into the mindset of, you're not on vacation, and plan accordingly. Obviously, I'll have a kitchen and I can prepare my own food, but it's hard to find an omelet outside of a major hotel in a major city, for breakfast. You get pastry and coffee and pastry and coffee, and it's fabulous, but it's pastry and pizza, and you get pizza, and the Italians eat a ton of pizza, pizza, more than I would have thought. So let's talk about cost of living. A lot of people think moving to Italy, it'll be a lot less expensive. Many things are similarly priced than you would find relative to the United States. Some things are cheaper. Restaurants can typically be less expensive. You're not tipping. And so I found that to be pretty reasonable. But a lot of things are more expensive, obviously. Petrol's more expensive, much more expensive. But you make some changes to your lifestyle to accommodate that. The cars are small with tiny motors, and they're pretty efficient. So you're not, spending $50 on petrol, once or twice a week. It's much more infrequent. Electricity can be a lot more expensive. And again, it depends on your lifestyle. You adapt. You don't use as much electricity. You buy energy efficient appliances. Your homes are typically restricted to 3 kilowatts as that's a default. You can upgrade from there. And if you are careful with how you manage your your appliances, your air conditioning and heat, things like that, then it can be reasonable. But you can also burn through an awful lot of electricity, and it won't be any cheaper than it is, say, here in the United States. So that's what I've learned in the 2 years that it's been since I first saw my house, and I couldn't be happier. The process was fabulous. Shout out to Salento with Love. They keep an eye after my house and pay the bills and really manage the property. So it's really convenient, and it's really necessary. that you have some resources that are trustworthy who can look after your property for you and help you with whatever repairs or uh, any kind of improvements you need to do to your house. So I love my house. I love the character. Look for a property with character and charm, and I think you'll be happy too. And I'm always open to any questions, and just reach out to me. And again, 50th episode. Thank you guys so much for being subscribers. If you're not, please subscribe. If you're new, there's 49 other videos for you to see. I encourage you to check them out and make recommendations for other videos you'd like to see. So until next time, thanks for watching.